Welcome back in, everybody, to Warchant TV through the beams of the sun. I'm the director of original content here at Warchant.com, Tom Lang. I am flanked by the managing editor of Warchant.com. He is Ira Schoffel, and today's topic is going to be a primer for Scrimmage 1. It's a situational scrimmage coming up for Florida State football on Saturday. We'll get to that in just a moment. Formalities time. Remember to hit the like button underneath this video if you have not done so already. You got fellow Noles out there who want great coverage. That's what we do at Warchant TV. Every time you hit the thumbs up, we find them. YouTube finds them. It's a magic process. We appreciate your help with the magic act. Also, help yourself out. Hit subscribe underneath this video if you have not done so yet. Warchant TV will populate on your YouTube app on youtube.com. Every time you log in, you'll get great FSU coverage from us at Warchant TV by hitting subscribe. So it's more of an informal discussion after the formalities, Ira. We've gotten to take in every single one of these Florida State football spring practices. By my count, it's 6 now, 6 practices, 4 with full pads. Maybe some general thoughts before we get going and talking about the scrimmage, Ira. How do you think things have gone before the break and then now 2 practices after spring break?
Yeah, I thought the first week went really well. The first 4 practices before they took that break, I thought they were pretty sharp. I thought the physicality was pretty good. I thought some good plays. Some of these newcomers really started to kind of emerge, and you could see how they might be able to help this team. And some of the returning players were stepping up. So I thought overall the first week was good. That first day back on Tuesday, Mike Norvell, and I wrote about this. Mike Norvell's not the kind to just rant after practice and complain. But I didn't think they looked very sharp on Tuesday. I didn't think they threw it and caught it well. I didn't think it just was the focus and the intensity wasn't there after that spring break, which was kind of unusual to take a 9-day break in the middle of the spring. But Thursday, we were kind of all like giggling after practice. That was as good as they've looked, I think, at any practice I've been at. And I was at every practice last season. So, I think there's a lot to be encouraged about. Again, you're always checking yourself because you know that the overall talent still isn't where it needs to be. But I think you really can see how different this team looks certainly compared to a year ago, but even in my opinion, even compared to midway through last season.
Yeah, I know that Corey wrote this in his article that you can find on warchant.com that, hope is for spring. It's kind of the purpose of spring. But I think there's a fine line, Ira, but there's a difference between reps being won by one side or reps being, lost by default because somebody screwed up. I think we're starting to see, and you've got a better handle on this because you saw every practice last fall, and at any point in Mike's, tenure, Mike Norvell's tenure that we could get out to practice, this looks a little bit different, more like reps are being more consistently won by one side rather than just, screwed up by the other side that lost the rep.
Yeah, I think you're seeing some really good plays. Not every play. I thought, for example, Sam McCall had an interception at practice on Thursday that, it was a nice play, but it was also an underthrown ball. It wasn't like a great it wasn't like a good throw and a great play. It wasn't a great throw. There are mistakes, here and there. But overall, yeah, the competitiveness, again, you see guys responding. I think what you see in a lot of positions is, if somebody loses a rep, then they come back and play better after that. And that's one of the things that, Norvell always talks about. And really, it's a basic premise of competing, but it's really something that Norvell harps upon is that, your response. And, if you get beat or if you have a bad play, do you respond to that by getting down? Do you respond to that by getting angry and making another mistake? Or do you respond by getting ready, getting focused, making the next play? And I think you're seeing some of that, particularly the receiver position. I think, I thought, those guys, they've been abused. That position in the past at Florida State, the last couple of years, the receivers have not won many battles in practice. They went out and got these 4 transfers, and, they're getting a lot of good things out of the transfers. But I also think they're getting a lot more out of, Pokey Wilson and Kentron Portier and Darian Williamson. I thought had a nice day yesterday. Some of those guys are raising their game as well, which is definitely what you want to see.
Yeah, for sure. And I think Malik McLean's had a really good week as well, where he's been kind of there the first, before spring break. He was there and he did what was expected. I thought it was a nice week for him. I could tell you anecdotally too, Ira, and I'll have something coming up on the site with trench notes observations. There are certain matchups like a Bless Harris versus Derek McClendon. They'll do one-on-ones. They mix and match what string guys play on, but there's individual matchups and 11-on-11 matchups. And you see these moments where, McClendon just absolutely abuses Bless on one play. Then Bless comes back on 2 plays, and McClendon breaks out the good moves, and then Bless wins it.
Can I ask you about Bless Harris? Because did you catch Jared Verse's interview yesterday? Were
I
you there
did.
when he was talking?
I did.
The way he talked up Bless Harris was that, I know you've watched the offensive tackles a lot and the offensive line a lot. Was he just hyping a guy up, or do you think there's that much potential there?
Well, I think by default, one thing that Bless said is, that Jared said he's one of the top 5 offensive linemen that he's ever gone against.
Right.
Well, given the competition that, Jared Verse has seen in his career, I don't think that's a crazy statement. I think it's probably true.
Right.
But in the first trench note observations piece I thought Bless was leader in the clubhouse for maybe the answer on the right side. They might dip back into the portal, but I thought he was refined. I love how technical he is. I love how quickly he assimilates the lessons that in individual work Alex Adkins is trying to teach him. I think Bless Harris is a floor raiser, and I think he might actually be somebody who starts in the fall if it continues down this line. I like very much what I've seen out of Bless Harris so far. I don't know that I go as far as Jared did, but I think for sure he's somebody who hasn't flashed in the wrong way, Ira. So I think that was a good pickup. I think it was a good get for FSU, especially given how many years Bless Harris has left to play here in Tallahassee. But the scrimmages are not open to us. That's one thing that we don't get to see, and we're not going to complain about that because the access we get is largely unfettered with Florida State and the football program. But Ira, I'm curious. We will get media availability on Saturday around lunchtime from the coaches and the coordinators. How much do you think? How forthcoming do you think is probably a better way to put it? Are these coaches about what they see in the scrimmage, and how much information will we be able to derive from the coaches?
Well, I think, Mike Norvell's pretty, now that we've been covering him now for 3 years, I mean, I think you can kind of read between the lines and some of the things he says. I don't think he's ever misleading. That's one thing I'd say for him. You might have a coach sometimes who maybe misrepresents things to kind of get more out of certain guys or whatever. But I think Mike Norvell's pretty honest in his assessments. And I really felt like last year when we got to actually see every practice and then you'd hear how he talked afterwards, you could tell it's if you know what you're listening to, he's being accurate in what he's saying. So I think you will get some good information. Adam Fuller's pretty transparent. He wears it on his sleeve. If if the defense doesn't play well, you're going to see it in Adam Fuller's face in the way he talks. And the one I'm really interested in is Alex Adkins, because we have not talked to him since he's been offensive coordinator after a game type situation. And I will say this, Kenny Dillingham, from a media perspective, was awesome because he just loved to talk and he loved to talk ball, and he was probably a little more complimentary of players sometimes. I don't think that's Alex Atkins' style. As you were saying, he is a kind of a taskmaster in general. So I don't know that he's going to be as forthcoming, but I'm curious to kind of see, because this will be the first time we see him in that kind of setting. But usually you can get a feel, man. If a coach, if the defense gets worn out, or if the offense gets worn out, or if a particular segment plays really poorly, I think you're going to be able to gather that just from talking. And then, as we all talk to people in the time after the scrimmage, we'll be able to connect some of the dots. But I think we'll get a decent feel.
Yeah, one of Kenny's tells was if he was not happy about how things went, he would speak over everybody and get more technical. And it's like, oh, okay, so you're clearly not happy to be here today. So we'll see what Alex is like. But one thing I noted, Coach Adkins, is when guys make big plays in team at the end of practice or in those team portions, Adkins makes a point to go over to skill position players and the quarterbacks. That's the different level of interaction that I'm seeing with Alex Adkins as an offensive coordinator. He's going to stick to the offensive line when it goes into the drills. You won't see him meander over to work with the quarterbacks when they're getting into position drills. But when they get into team, he seems to be a lot more interactive with the skill position players. So I'm interested as well to hear his feedback. So we'll have the coverage for you here on warchant.com and Warchant TV on Saturday into Sunday about what we're hearing about how the scrimmage went. But are there some major storylines now that we've seen those 6 practices, Ira, that you're looking to ask about? And what things are you excited to hear about feedback-wise from the coaches?
Yeah, I think we're, not that there's a quarterback battle. There's not a quarterback battle. Jordan Travis is a starting quarterback, and he had some moments again on Thursday where you're like, wow, man, he had a run. And, talking about a Jordan Travis run being good is like, I don't know, talking about like Aaron Judge having a good at bat. Or hitting a ball hard. it's what you expect. But he had a run where he's kind of coming to the sideline I was standing at, and two defenders were there, two defensive backs were there, and it looked like they had him hemmed up perfectly. And man, he just puts his foot in the ground and is gone the other way. And you could hear like the other players like that, ooh, and they've seen it a million times, but and then he just dropped in some beautiful passes as well. So there's not a competition, but Tate has looked so much better, and there were periods Thursday where he just looked the best we've ever seen him. So from his standpoint, if he can be the backup quarterback in 2022, these opportunities, these scrimmages are going to be a big deal for him. And it's not to compete for the job necessarily. It's just to prove that he can be a viable backup if Jordan has to leave a game at any point. So that's a big one. And then some of the position battles, Jared Verse talked about it yesterday, that, this will be this is kind of where the depth chart starts getting set. You can do a lot of things in practice. There's a lot of drills. There's a lot of one-on-one stuff. There's a lot of even the team stuff. And Mike Norvell mentioned that they do incorporate scrimmage situations in the team portion of practice. So it's not like they haven't scrimmaged. They've had kind of like mini portions of scrimmages throughout the practices. But it's a different deal when you go in that stadium. And so some of the position battles, Caden Lyles versus Maurice Smith at center, is that one where you see somebody, can Caden Lyles take over that position? Maurice Smith is the incumbent. Caden Lyles comes in from Wisconsin, looks the part, but can he maybe win that job at some point? I think obviously in the secondary now with Jarvis Brownlee being gone, there's a pretty wide open competition at cornerback. I think the linebackers, they know that top four. You have the top three guys from last year, and you bring in, Tatum Bethune. So I think that rotation's kind of, pretty stable. And I think defensive tackle rotation's pretty stable. Safety, there's probably some competition. Just the defensive backfield in general is pretty wide open. But yeah, and then just guys continuing to make plays. But again, carrying it over to that stadium, it shouldn't be different. And there's not going to be a crowd there. But sometimes it is different. Sometimes that first day in that stadium, some guys struggle in those situations and some guys step up. And so I'll be really looking forward to hearing some of that.
Yeah, I agree. To add a couple more position groups, the slot receiver job is interesting to me. There are a lot of guys who can play it, but there are a couple of guys who can play it really well. Ja'Kai Douglas has had an excellent camp so far. Micah Pittman had one hell of a day on Thursday. And does somebody get slotted outside because they've got quite a few options there? And then the running back battle, too.
Yeah.
Trayshawn Ward has been quite good and very sharp the last 2 or 3 practices, but you see moments where guys even like C.J. Campbell or Rodney Hill show out. And Trey Benson, of course, is a big body that everybody's going to want to hear about. But how do those guys perform under the lights? It should be very, very interesting. Well, that's what we're going to have for you here at warchant.com and Warchant TV. Saturday morning, 8:30 a.m., roughly speaking, is when the scrimmage begins. It's a situational scrimmage. We're going to get availability from the coaching staff around lunchtime. So be on the lookout for content right here, warchant.com, Warchant TV on Saturday. In the interim, there'll be a trench notes and trench observations piece I'll put together. It's going to largely be about the offensive line. I've been following the offensive line almost to a point of probably getting sick of it a little bit, but I love it. It's the lifeblood of where this offense is going to go, so I'll have that piece on warchant.com. And then, Ira, you and I on Sunday, 7 p.m., Sunday Smash, so we'll have more intel from the scrimmage at that point. Any final thoughts or things that you want to tease before we go?
No, man, just looking forward to it. We have more coverage. I've got a notebook, an insider report coming as well with some more coverage from Thursday's practice, and then some recruiting stuff. I think they've got some recruits coming into town, so we'll have coverage of that as well.
We have a lot of people on staff here at warchant.com and Warchant TV, and we put them to good use. So if you haven't hit subscribe yet, please do so. You will be apprised on everything Florida State football over the next 4 weeks, 3 weeks of camp. For Ira Schoffel, the managing editor of Warchant.com, my name is Tom Lang. We will see you next time on Warchant TV.